Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Keeping You in the Know, all things real estate. I'm your host, Carey with CMG Financial and My Mortgage Team. And this week, we're talking all things appraisals. We've got the talented appraiser, Scott Lamuno, a buddy of mine. He's been doing appraisals now for over 15 years. He works with the Caldwell Group. And today we're going to talk about best practices for real estate agents and consumers. So welcome, Scott.
Hey, thanks so much, Carey Ann. Good to see you.
Always good to see you.
Well.
Yes.
Always good to see you in person.
Oh, I love
on
it.
Video, at least.
We are social distancing ourselves, so I'm glad that Zoom has been our friend to help work through all of this COVID thing. I will tell you, probably the best thing out of COVID is us having to learn Zoom, because this has saved me a lot of time and been able to connect with a lot of people through that great tool, Zoom. So let's talk about best practices. Right now, the inventory is low, right? And
Yes,
agents are still wanting to close transactions really fast. And I am hearing some rumblings that there's some delays only because sometimes agents aren't prepared. And so I thought us discussing best practices may be one that can help the real estate agent, and then also talk about the best practices for the consumer when looking at refinancing their home as well, or preparing their home for the real estate agent to then have that prepared for you, the appraiser. So share some best practices for the real estate agent.
Well, for real estate agents, I mean, it's always good to be very available. And as any good real estate agent knows, the good fast return calls are great for appraisers. We try to call as soon as we can, as soon as we get the order, at least within the first 24 hours that we get it. We definitely have been delayed. We've been really busy, so we're calling agents as fast as we can and trying to set these appointments as quickly as we can. So just being available is very important. And then just having, I guess, the seller, or if the house is vacant or whatever, just ready to go, so that when we can go and do our thing and get out of there quickly and safely, but also getting everything that we need with the measurements, the pictures, all the access to all the rooms, crawl spaces, especially if we're doing FHA or FHA appraisals. We need into crawl spaces and basements and attics, so easy access to all those things would be pretty important for appraisers, to speed it up and to help us to be able to get it done as quickly as possible, so we can get it back as soon as we can.
Right. So basically what you're saying is for the agent to go out there, confirm all doors are unlocked. If there is a crawl space, make sure you have the availability to get under there, right? Because you have to do, what is it? I feel like we're playing the head, shoulders, knees and toes game, but is it a head and shoulders? What is it now?
Well, definitely for crawl spaces and attics that are tough to get into, we have to at least go head and shoulders into it to be able to view the. We try to go in as far as you can, but the minimum is head and shoulders for scuttle accesses, and also for crawl spaces. For drop stairs, we try to go through as far as we can to see as much as we can, and then as basements, we go through the whole thing to see as much as we can. But yeah, so access is important. I mean, even if the agent can't get there or do anything to it, as long as we know, or they know, that we can get into all these places and that they're accessible, they're not locked up with padlocks, or if they are, that we know where the keys are and that kind of thing, if they're not happen to be in the lockbox. So access to everything is very important for sure. And safe practices, I mean, when we go into houses, if a mask is required or needed, then we wear masks, and for safety's sake, for COVID crisis.
Very important that we maintain the safety there. So you talked about pictures. It's pictures in all rooms as well?
Yeah, I try to get as many pictures as I can, just for a lot of them don't go in the appraisal, but some of them just go for documentation so I can remember. Sometimes we're doing several appraisals a day, and it's good to take lots of pictures so we know all the things that we looked at, when we were there, and we don't forget about it, for sure. So, but we do take pictures of all the rooms, especially major areas, garages, water heaters sometimes if needed, different, as many things as we can. And if we see any, deferred maintenance or defective things, then we take pictures of those too as well.
Yes, I see those in my appraisals.
Yeah.
I'm like, why'd you take a picture of that? But I get it.
I get it. Don't want to see that, but sometimes,
it's important. I get it.
Important.
And you spoke about measurements. So you're measuring each room?
Well, we're measuring the outside of the house.
Okay.
Not really room to room, but the outside of the house, and then obviously the upstairs. If it's different than that, if it's not a regular full 2-story, then we'll measure. We'll go on the inside and measure as well, and then basements too. Measure basements, everything that we try to do. With garages and carports and everything. So we try to have a good number for all that.
So what you're speaking of right now is doing a full appraisal. Many of our listeners know that the agencies have extended the exterior only or drive-by appraisals. Have you seen that you're doing a lot of full appraisals right now, and or have you ventured into the drive-bys? And if you were to do a drive-by, is it you just driving by, or what's the process with a drive-by appraisal?
Well, I try to do the full appraisals if I can. I'd rather do that just because with a drive-by appraisal or a desktop appraisal, that you just don't know as much. You don't get as good a feel for the house. Sometimes the pictures on the MLS are so good that they make the house look so much different than sometimes it actually is. So it's good to actually see the house. But, a lot of times with the current, COVID crisis and whatnot, we have been doing drive-by appraisals, and has been allowed. And so that's something we have been doing. So if it's a drive-by appraisal, for sure, we drive by the house, we take pictures of the outside, and then we get all the other information and the square footage from either, the most reliable source that we can find, either the MLS or the tax records. And then we look at the pictures, and then we get the interior finishings from the pictures and that kind of thing. Then if it's a desktop appraisal, then we don't go by the house at all. Then it's all based on, the MLS pictures, the square, everything from, all on paper, what's on paper.
Online, basically. Okay.
Yeah, online, everything. So, and so we have done, those two different things have been available for some of the COVID, issues.
Sure. But like you're saying, if the information online is not as accurate, because you and I have dealt with some people listing the square footage of one home online is not as true to what it truly is now, et cetera, right? So it just really would depend on what's truly online. So let me ask you the question that we get a lot of is, because inventory is low and there's escalation clauses in contracts and, people are outbidding each other, there's multiple offer situations, the prices of the homes for the sales price have maybe going over the list price, right? So do you guys look at the true purchase price of that home meaning do you review the contract? Do you then review the MLS of what it was listed for? Or are you going blinded into just seeing the address of that home and researching the true value? Does any of those items have any effect on you working towards value?
Well, that's definitely part of the process. I mean, on purchase appraisals, we do get a copy of the contract. So we are reviewing the sales price, and we're reviewing any kind of different aspects of the contract, different things that might be in there that we want to take note of. Then, if the sales price is quite a bit higher than the actual list price, then we try to take consideration of all that. But then at the end of the day, for appraisals and for appraisers, we're very limited sometimes to historical data, which are sales that are in the area as most recently as that we can use to come up with our opinion of value. So sometimes, we'll see houses that are really out on a limb in regards to the sales price versus what some of the other sales are going for in the area that have sold. So it makes it challenging sometimes doing appraisals in areas that are increasing rapidly, but also if it's decreasing rapidly, it's hard to get good numbers for those too, like good accurate numbers. So, but we do use the most comparable properties we can. We consider current active listings and trends, and even pending sales that aren't necessarily direct comparables for us that we could use, but we do consider all that. We'll look at competing neighborhoods to see, other comparable houses that have maybe sold just recently that can really show that increase. Because that's something we can do. We can make adjustments on the appraisal for, a lot of people call them time adjustments or market adjustments, and that's for houses that have sold in the past that maybe aren't necessarily the price that they would be right now. And so if we use a comp that's older, we can use a time adjustment as long as we can prove it.
Oh.
So if we can prove the adjustment, then we can make the adjustment. But it definitely is more challenging especially when they go way out there, further than what we can support. Then
Sure.
It makes it difficult. Then definitely cash is a good influence that will, get it there if the appraisal doesn't quite get it there.
So a best practice for you as an appraiser, you're looking for other like comps. So if I had a manufactured home, you have to look at other manufactured homes, right? If I have
Yes.
something that's considered a berm home, a house underground, you have to take in consideration other homes that are which
Yeah.
are underground, right? Is that the situation?
For sure. So
Okay.
we're trying to find the most comparable properties we can. And obviously with residential real estate, a lot of houses are unique, and some are not unique. I mean, there's some subdivisions that there's lots of houses that are very similar.
Right.
And we can find lots of comparables. But then there's a lot of houses that are not very similar. And so sometimes it's hard to find comparables for properties, but also like we're not trying to target a value either. So we're not trying to come in at a predetermined number. For appraisers, that's kind of like a no-no for us.
Sure.
So we're just trying to come in at the most accurate value that we can come up with in our own opinion. Now, every appraiser is different, so we're all pretty opinionated actually, and so so we come up with the value based on what we think the value is. Now, a lot of times maybe that's contract price maybe is the value of the house, so it may come in right at that.
Sure.
But it may not. I mean, could come in higher or lower based on the sales that we have, based on the data that we have in the area.
So if I was a real estate agent and I knew I had a unique property, would I already prepare my comparables and have them on the kitchen table knowing you're coming out on Tuesday, or would I email those over to you, or would you forego that as being one of the best practices?
Well, that's always a good thing for appraisers to, like if you have something that's pretty unique, to let the appraiser know how you came up with that listing price is not a bad thing. And if I have seen a real estate agency either leave the comparables on the table or something like that, or just emailing them is fine. And that's something that most appraisers I think would review, because we're looking at comparables in the area, and sometimes they are hard to find. And if that agent works that specific area all the time, then they may know some sales that may not be MLS sales. They may be off-market sales. They may be things that didn't quite get there that are good that we could use, and that would be, that's definitely helpful for sure.
So looking at a new construction property versus a resale property, and let's say the new construction is 75% there, even 90% there, but not fully completed. Would you recommend, and I get this question a lot, that's why I wanted to ask, would you recommend holding off and waiting till the house is fully completed, or are you able, at a certain percentage of house completion, being able to truly give value at that point? What's your suggestion?
Well, as long as I know what's going into the house, like in regards to like the plans or the specs that's going into the house, so it really doesn't matter exactly. At one point we see it, like if it's under construction. I mean, it's nice to see all the finishes when they're done, but if we know all the finishes that are going in, then we can do the appraisal subject to completion with knowing what's going in it. And then when we do the final inspection, then we'll see it when it's there. So, I mean, it's good to wait a little bit for sure toward, closer to the end, but sometimes I've noticed that people want to wait till it's 100% complete and then, well, maybe they're going to close the next day. And if they do the appraisal that day, well, it's not going to close because we're all way behind. And if we do the appraisal well, you guys still need to underwrite it. You still need to do all your stuff. And so it just puts a pinch on everything, if you wait to the last minute to do so I think it's better for sure to, while it's under construction, go ahead and do the initial appraisal, even though I'd rather not go out twice. I'd rather not, but it just makes sense because it's really stressful if we're trying to do the appraisal and it's trying to close the next day or the next 2 days and you don't even have it yet.
Yeah.
And you're like, we need to close and you don't have the appraisal. At least if you're just waiting on the final, then you can, you have the whole appraisal, it's underwritten, it's ready to go. You just need the final, so you're good.
Yes, I think that is exactly where we were headed with this as a best practice. If you are listing in new construction, be comfortable with the idea that we want to get the appraisal done, close to that 90% mark and then do the final. Yeah. The final will run you between $125, $175 depending on the AMC and lender. But I definitely think time is, money, right? And so you do not want to have a delay because the appraiser is a little backed up by the time you're ready and they're not. So that's a great best practice. Let's talk about if, does it matter if my house is clean or not clean when it comes to the value? Because we have a lot of consumers that are going to be listening to this. And let's say you're going to be appraising my property for refinance and or the agent is getting it prepared and I've got kids and we're running around. Do the beds need to be made? Really, how does that have anything to do with the value?
Well, for us as appraisers, that has no effect on us. So if, it's cluttered, if there's boxes everywhere, if there's beds that are not made, if there's kids and whatever running around, it's really it doesn't make any difference. Because, we're appraising the house, we're appraising the finishings, the fixed items that are there. And, if the pictures are going on the MLS or something, I would say, yeah. But for us, the pictures are going in the file, they're going in the report, and they're going, to you guys and going in a file for a long time, I guess. So it's not really, it's not for,
we don't have to worry about that. Okay, we'll cross that off the best practice. You don't have to have, hire the house cleaner for the appraiser. So that's appraisal. That's good. So although let's talk about I'm upgrading my bathroom or my master bathroom and I'm halfway through and this happens a lot because the consumer's really excited to refinance, but they forget that they're in the midst of a renovation. Are you able to look over certain parts of renovation or are you going to move that in the direction of needs to be fully completed by the time, this appraisal is qualified?
Yeah, I do see that quite a bit sometimes when people are trying to do a refinance. If you're going to do some improvements to the house, I would wait until after the appraisal is done and then do your renovations. Because if you tear out your bathroom, if you tear out your master bathroom while I'm doing the appraisal, a lot of times you guys want the appraisal as is. So if the appraisal is as is, then you don't have a master bathroom anymore. So it's now, instead of a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, now it's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house with a future bathroom. If we did the appraisal as is, and then your value is going to be lower, it's going to be not, similar to other comparables, you're going to have adjustments across the board for condition because if you're going to sell that right now, just imagine that's what we're looking at. So if it's as is right now, what's the value right now with that bathroom the way it is? So I wouldn't do that. I would wait. But then if you're going to do that, then a lot of times we would have to do the appraisal, subject to completion. But then a lot of times you want to close faster than that.
Right.
So you don't want to wait till it's done to close the loan. You probably have it locked at a certain time. So you want to get that done. So it definitely messes it up if there's things that are under construction. Now, small things are fine. If you're painting something, that's no big deal. Or if you're doing little things here and there, that's not going to change anything. But like if you're doing some things where you're, doing some major renovation or, then you got to think, well, the appraiser is going to do this as it is right now. And the lender, the underwriter is not going to want to see that. They're not going to want to see those things unfinished. And so, because we can do the appraisal either way, but we know it's not going to go through that way, the way it looks. So it'd have to be subject to completion or wait till it's finished and then do the appraisal after.
Right. So best practice for all the consumers that are out there listening and you want maybe do a refi, wait on your renovations, do your refi, and then do your renovations. That would be your best practice. Let's also share with everybody about flooring. I think sometimes we get confused about that because, you know, concrete's hip nowadays, right? But I think it has to be stained concrete to be truly flooring. So if you go into a house and, you know, there was a stain on a carpet, so somebody pulled it up, there has to be flooring there. Is that correct? When you
I mean, that's a pretty standard thing now. I mean, you have to have some kind of floor covering, you know, carpet or vinyl, or it can be concrete. I mean, that you're seeing more houses, more common to have, you know, concrete as their flooring, but then usually it's got to be sealed or some kind of something on it to be really considered like it's a floor covering.
So a best practice would be if you know your home they're missing floor coverings, Home Depot might have a sale on cheap turf or something. Just put something down, right? So you don't have to condition for it to be added to save some time.
I mean, I mean, something down would be good for sure. And more than it would be as if it were, you know, just a exposed plywood or something. So you got to have some kind of covering over it and for it to be considered like enough to do lending on. So you don't want it below average. It has to be at least average.
Perfect. Really good information. So kind of what we shared today, and thank you, Scott, for joining us. Best practices for real estate agents. Be sure to be very responsive. We're hearing a lot of delays just because of lack of response. Again, the appraisers, there's only so many. Do you even know how many appraisers here, Scott, are in Middle Tennessee? I don't think there's a lot.
Idea.
I don't think
a bunch.
I don't think there's a lot.
A bunch, but not like enough. I don't think.
I don't think enough either. Yeah, and they're doing an amazing job. And you know, we can offer a rush fee, etc. But there's only so much time in a day. Now Middle Tennessee goes so far north and so far south. You know, and everybody is finding little crannies and areas to move to. So make sure we're taking time into consideration. Make sure all your doors are unlocked like he referenced, you know, make sure that they can get into all of the under spaces, the garages, all of those things, super important. Last, I do want to ask you though about my utilities. Do you check for those? Do those have to be on?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely check to see if they're on because you guys and the underwriters, they want to know if they're at least functional.
Right. So a best practice would make sure those are on, right? As real estate agents. So that's super important to do that. And work closely with your lending company about, you know, if your seller is comfortable having an appraiser come into the home. They're still allowing for drive-bys and desktops. Like Scott was sharing, it's a little harder because they're working off of data online, and if that's data is true or not is still up in the air. But that is important. And if you are a consumer looking to refinance, make sure that you do the same, that you understand that they're looking at like comparables out there. Don't go into any early renovations, and also make sure that everything is unlocked and safe. But don't worry about making the bed that day if you don't have to. So he's not going to worry about that. I love it. Well, thank you again for joining us, Scott. Always a pleasure. You give so much knowledge. You're amazing at what you do, and we appreciate your professionalism and your expertise and being a top-notch appraiser here and always doing what's right. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you guys next week on Keeping You in the Know, all things real estate. See you soon.